It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call to the order the meeting of the Board of Education for District 59. It's Wednesday, April 9th. If I could have Secretary Eddie call the roll, please.
Zach.
Present.
Eddie, present. Johnson.
Present.
Notini. Present. Sager.
Here.
Chesney.
Present.
All right. Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First item is comments and suggestions from the public. Anybody here wish to address the board tonight? All right. If not, we can move on to our presentation, the NSSEO tentative budget presentation.
Thank you for having us. Oh, is it not up?
Present.
Oh, it's green. Okay,
Opposite
color
of last
coded.
night.
Yes, the opposite of last night. I'm Meg Schnorr. I am the proud superintendent of NSSEO, and we are here tonight to talk about next year's budget. I just want to say to everyone that we are very excited to continue the partnership with District 59. Member districts at NSSEO, and membership does have its privileges. I will tell you that our programs are highly sought after. They are very well run. I've only been here, this is the end of my second year. I inherited a very well-run, fine-oiled machine, and we continue to work towards the future and providing for your students with the most significant special needs. The programs that you will see tonight are a little, they're a little pricey, but I will tell you that as a member of NSSEO, if a student moves in, happens to have a situation where they have special needs that cannot be met by your schools, because you are a member of NSSEO, we have a no rejection policy for our members. For non-members, we have to assess whether or not our schools and our staff can handle an additional student, and they do pay about 30% more than you do as a member. And we also have a waiting list of those non-members because we simply don't have space, because our programs are very popular. We have one student who comes all the way from Illinois for our programs. So the budget that you're about to see is going to detail what we need for next year. So with that, I'm going to introduce my CSBO, Gavin McGinn.
All right. Hello. If you can, a couple of slides. Perfect. We'll start with this one. So I just wanted to start with kind of explaining our process of the budget. We start back in December, and at that point, I reach out to all of your special education representatives. We meet with our principals and our schools, and that's when we kind of get enrollment projections, purchase service projections, things like that. So then in January, I meet with the finance committee, which is all 8-member CSBOs and admin reps, as well as our NSSEO administration. And at those first meetings, we establish the rates for the next school year. So that's workman's comp, TRS, IMRF, all those types of things. And once those are established, we start in February kind of building out the tuition rates for our programs. So we take those enrollment and we kind of use that to come up with a tuition for the programs. And then at the end of March, we present the final budgets to your member business managers. And then we give our member districts April and May to review them, have presentations like this, and then we'll bring it back for the final vote. So I just wanted to let you know that the 3 schools or the 3 programs that impact District 59, Minor, Timber Ridge, and DHH. Minor saw a 3.8% increase in tuition this upcoming year. Timber Ridge was 3.72%, and the deaf and hard of hearing 2. These are pretty much right in alignment with our contract increase for next year for salaries. So that's kind of coming in. So if you go to the next page, NSSEO runs a zero balance budget. That means that our revenues and expenditures match exactly. And then anything that's left over in our programs at the end of the year gets returned back out to our member districts. So, if we have a big influx of enrollment, we might have $1 million or $2 million that gets dispersed back out to our member districts. Some years when our enrollment's down a little bit or things like that, it can be 1,000 or something like that. So the percentage is based on your usage of NSSEO, and your district will receive that refund. of see the graph of our overall budget. The top part is a little bit high. That includes our $9 million TRS on behalf, which that NSSEO actually ever sees. It's not actual cash, it's just the pension liabilities that have to get built into our state budget that gets submitted. And it also did include about $3 million in capital improvements for our Kirk. So on the bottom chart, I did remove those two things to kind of show a more accurate picture of where our budget's at. 5% increase from this current year to next for the overall budget. Next page is District 59 specifically. The top part are our tuition programs. So you have 24 students projected at Timber Ridge, 21 at Minor, 3 at our DHH elementary program. And then in the tuition rate for that program. And on the right, you can see the total anticipated cost for the school year. In the middle, you can see our purchase services or other services that District 59 is purchasing from NSSEO. We have OTs, PTs, assistive techs, all of those things. So you can see here that you're buying about 0.1 FTE of vision, assistive tech, some DHH itinerant service, some coaching services, and a 0.6 bilingual psych. So this is kind of a good snapshot of where you're projected to be next year. This is what your business managers can build budget as they start to develop your individual budget for next school year. And then the final page is another just kind of recap. So just showing that your student enrollment projections and then the purchase services, you've had these same purchase services this current year. So there's no increase for purchase service next year. You're decreasing a little bit in adaptive PE, which was 0.01 is, I don't even know, like a couple hours a week. And then the overall increase projected for next year is just shy of 300,000. So again, this is because of the increase of 4 students and just the tuition increase for the students you currently have. Again, these are all projections. It's, what is it right now, April? By August, these enrollment might be up, it might be down. So this is just a projection. If you only end up with 22 kids at Timber Ridge, you're not going to be billed for 24. You would only be billed for the actual enrollment that we see. So that's just kind of a snapshot. Sorry, I talk a little fast. Does anyone have any questions or?
I have a question that's not so budget, but where is the deaf and hard of hearing housed?
Yep. So we have so there are a couple. The high school one is at Hersey High School. The elementary, I believe, is District 21. District 21, and then the middle school program is, I think, District 60.
MacArthur.
Yeah, 62 or 63. So we don't have a standalone building for those. They're all out at some school buildings.
I have a question. Kirk School is not served by 59. Doesn't go
It's
into
for high
Kirk.
school students only now. So it
Oh.
used to be K through 22 at both Kirk and Minor.
Okay.
4 or 5 years ago, we made the switch where Kirk is our high school, campus, Minor is our
Okay.
up through 8th grade.
Okay. Could you describe, what sort of services you provide at Timber Ridge and at Minor?
Sure.
Timber Ridge is for our students, just making sure it's on. Timber Ridge is for our students who have emotional disabilities, and they may be acting out, they may be internalizing. It provides the students with a smaller class size. They have a teacher in the classroom. They also have a therapist, because the therapist is able to really dig into what is the etiology of why they're acting out or why they're internalizing. Is it depression? Is it a number of things? Some of our students at Timber Ridge are on the autism spectrum. So that is Timber Ridge. And we have students in kindergarten through 8th grade at Timber Ridge. And then at Minor, more significant multiple disabilities. A lot of students fall under the autism spectrum or physical disabilities with autism. Really much more severe than the students that we see at Timber Ridge.
Federal funding, are you have concerns on your federal funding? Has there been any?
We keep an eye every day. I mean, it seems that IDEA is going to obviously be moving out of the Department of Education and into the Department of Human Services, but we have not seen any indication that we will no longer receive that. That is not anything that's come up. So, yeah.
So thank you.
Question. When there are services that are done at the school but not necessarily provided, so like Medicare reimbursed services, that's from the federal government as well,
Correct.
but that's not like a required service. We don't have to replace it if there's not an outside funding source, or is it?
I'm not sure I'm understanding.
We
your
would,
question.
yeah. We do build some of that Medicaid funding into our tuition to kind of offset some of
Yes.
the costs. So yeah, if there were to be some type of, decrease or cuts to those, there would be some impact on the tuition. Because we do kind of build some of that in to help keep our tuition rates down. So
Our Medicaid funding is significant.
I think
Yeah,
if I,
I remember.
yeah.
So-
So we are keeping an eye on it, obviously, just like all our districts and everyone is. So
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Our presentation is a early learning update.
All right, so thank you for having us this evening. My name is Elizabeth Degree. I'm the Executive Director of Educational Services, and I have two of my colleagues here to talk about early learning, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Melissa Ward. I'm the early child.
And I'm Michelle Shabaker, the principal at Ridge.
And Michelle Ramsey regrets that she couldn't be here, the principal at Early Learning Center. She's ill today. So, learning. We have some things we're gonna talk through. Introductions. We're gonna look at early intervention to early childhood programming, that transition and screening, and how that works. We're going to talk a little bit about how things look at the ELC and at Ridge, and then think about considerations for the future as it. So, in terms of our programs, there's a bunch of things both buildings, and they all fall under the early childhood umbrella, but there's lots of different components that might impact differently. So special education is required for students 3 to 21 in public school districts. So our students who receive special education services, those services we must provide to our students who are eligible in the district. It's partially funded by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. You heard Meg reference the IDEA. We receive a decent amount of money from the IDEA, not for so much for preschool. The funding is fairly low. I think it's, I wrote down the number. It is $56,000, so not very much money. But that is partially funded and it is required. The next piece is Preschool for All. And Preschool for All is an at-risk preschool program. That is funded at a much higher level for us. We do receive, this year we received $632,506. Preschool for All has some very specific eligibility criteria. In order to qualify to attend Preschool for All, you need to be a student who meets several different, or at least one of several different at-risk factors. Special ed classrooms. So then we have kids in classrooms that serve only kids with disabilities. We have kids in blended classrooms that serve kids with disabilities and kids without disabilities. We have bilingual Spanish classrooms, and we also have tuition students. So right now we have, and I should say, as we look today, we are serving 401 children across our two sites. That is the highest number of kids that we have ever served in our early childhood program. So that's a real celebration. It's 324 at the Early Learning Center and 77 at Ridge. The tuition students are typically developing and don't meet special ed criteria. So with that, I'm going to let Melissa talk a little bit about the early intervention to early childhood transition. Okay, thanks.
All right, so good evening. Thank you for taking the time to hear about our program. It's something we're extremely proud of. So how do students get to us is often a question that we hear. And it's important to understand that one of the largest group of children that come to our door are those students or those children who have been receiving services through the Birth to Three program through the state of Illinois. Those children are receiving or daycare-based programming based upon identified delays in their development. Prior to them turning 3 years of age, we receive notification from the state and from Child and Family Connections, which is the agency in the area that coordinates those services for those families. During that time, prior to them turning 3, there are a number of things that happen. One is I connect with the families to provide them information on what the school evaluation process look like for them, and give them some general programming information to inform them so they can decide whether they would like to continue pursuing therapies for their children in a school environment. They could choose to pursue therapies privately, or they could choose to completely discontinue. Turning 3 years of age, it's our district's responsibility to complete a special education evaluation to determine whether they meet a disability category and qualify for special education services. And if they do, the individualized education plan or the IEP must be written and in place so that upon the child's birthday, they can begin accessing school services. So what that means is almost all year round, we are going through this process. We are completing evaluations from typically late July through early June after school has ended. There's a brief period of time where we let staff go. When we complete the evaluation, there's a number of factors that we are looking at or sources of data. We are reviewing those records from early intervention, completing a play-based evaluation that's developmentally appropriate for that child. There might be some sort of standardized testing. There could be rating scales that we're asking families, daycare providers to complete. We're asking for parent input. And then if the child is enrolled in a daycare, we oftentimes will ask families for authorization to talk to the daycare provider, idea of what that child looks like within that daycare environment. That often informs us of what they might need within a school classroom environment. Just to give you an idea of the amount of evaluations that we complete, one data point is from July 1st of 24 through June 30th of 25, we will have completed 104 evaluations. Within that we have been notified of from early intervention, we've had 29 families either move out of district from the time that we were notified, or they declined to make that transition into the school environment for a number of reasons. Again, if the child is eligible for those services, they begin those services on their 3rd birthday. The exception to that is if a child is eligible for services and they turn 3 during the summertime when we're closed for the summer, those early interventions are able to be extended during that summer period. So there is no gap between them turning 3 and them beginning school and accessing services through us.
Can I ask your outreach? Like how do families get to you?
Yes, there's a number of ways that happens. We do collaborate very closely with Child and Family Connections. So not only are they referring families to us, we're referring families to them of children who are not in that age where we would be connecting with them. And my next slide, we're going to be talking about screenings. One of the ways that we get families to engage with us, we have information on the website, word of mouth, families saying to other families, oh, my child goes here. If you are interested, you should call their office. Our staff, not just in the early childhood program, but also at the elementary and junior high levels, as families come engage with our staff. They are seeing the younger siblings, and so they will oftentimes say, have you ever considered getting, your child screened or enrolled in our preschool program? We do preschool information nights through libraries. Our family facilitator goes and does preschool information nights so that families are and that we have these different avenues where they can access services. Okay, the next slide is talking about preschool screenings and child find screenings. So before I go into them, I want you to understand that if a family reaches out to us and says, I have concerns about my child's development, they do not need to identify, and I'm looking for a preschool for all screening, or I'm looking for a child. The reality is it's all one and the same, but the results of that screening may take us down a number of different paths. All right, so I'm going to start off by saying that. Child find is a requirement as part of IDEA. We have a responsibility to locate children who we suspect may have a disability. We also are required through the Preschool for All grant to conduct screenings to identify children who may be eligible for the PF. So we hold 2 major screenings, one in August before school begins and another in January. We chose January because throughout the years, we see trends that typically after winter break, families, for whatever reason, are like, I think I need to connect and I finally need to decide I'm going to reach out to my school if they can help me with my child. And so we have families who will call us. They say, I have concerns about my child. We have them complete a couple of questionnaires, which gives us some really nice baseline data and input from the family. What are they seeing? The other piece to that is that sometimes families may not have a comparison to know what is a typically developing child. And so those questionnaires give us an idea before we even have the child of what might be some of the areas that may be delayed and we want to take a closer look at. So the developmental screenings consist of us having the families come in. We obtain consent for screening because we must obtain consent to take place. We take a picture of the child so that we can match up the child with the file later on as if necessary. And we administer a developmentally appropriate screening that looks at all of the areas of development. So we're looking at language skills, motor, both fine and gross motor. And then we're interviewing the family while they're in the room with the child. We're asking input from the family. Is this typical of what you see from your child? Asking them a number of follow-up questions based on those questionnaires that were completed. We provide the results of the screening to the family before they even leave that day. So the parents or the family members know if their child is qualifying for a program, if additional data is going to be needed to determine for special education services, and that process again is explained to them before they leave. And then if they're right away, we will go ahead and make sure that their registration is completed so that we can get them enrolled immediately. The point of this is to get them in for as many days of school as we possibly can. During this current school year, we have completed 75 screenings. And like I said, as soon as we identify that child is eligible to attend our program, we get them enrolled and we get them started. So between early screenings or evaluations and our child find and PFA screenings, we have nearly 200 children that we have completed that process for. And they are enrolling throughout. We kind of laugh, but it's not really laughing. We have a day one almost every day in the early childhood program. So elementary schools and junior highs, their first day of school is in August. For us, Every day is day one, and that's great.
So our next piece is the state of the state at ELC, which Melissa's going to talk about since Michelle wasn't able to make it.
Okay, so at the Early Learning Center, as Elizabeth had indicated, this was data right after spring break, so it's slightly outdated already, but we're at 323 students across our blended or general education and our self-contained classrooms. So what happens during a day at the Early Learning Center? Students are engaging in a number of large and small group activities, choice and center time, which is where the students find areas where they would like to engage, and then our staff are facilitating the play and the learning through play in those centers. They have gross motor and playground activities. It is a combination of child-centered or child-driven activities, as well as some more structured gross motor activities. And we also have a snack. Snack is more than just eating. It's a great opportunity for communication, for social emotional, fine motor skills, socialization with peers. So there's a lot of things that happen during that snack time. Social emotional learning. We have language. Our speech pathologists will often lead large groups where we're focusing on literacy, music and movement, and vocabulary development. And then academic readiness are woven throughout the course of everything that we're doing during the course of the day. So that's a general typical day and at our building. In addition to our building, I know if Michelle were sitting here, one of the things I would say she was most proud about is our family university. Michelle really spearheaded getting this initiative in place approximately 4 years ago. Family University is an opportunity for families, whether the students are enrolled in our program or not, and their families to come to our building and engage in family activity. We typically will have some sort of dinner to start the evening off where all of the families can come together and connect with one another. And then the families, the adults break into a group and the children go off and they are engaging with our staff in developmentally appropriate activities in classrooms areas. And what this does is it allows our families the opportunity to learn about a number of topics. Some of them are family driven. We ask families what they're interested in. And then other topics are areas that we have identified over the years as positive feedback around, wow, I'm so glad I learned about that. I really had no idea. Thank you for providing us with that information. This school year, we've had 25 or more families participate in the session. We've 100 students amongst all of those families with their parents and their siblings. We do provide some tutoring and homework help for the older students if those older students come as well. Another opportunity that we provide to our...
I'm sorry. Can I just ask a question about Family University?
Yes.
How often are sessions taking place?
So it's 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring, and there's a multitude of sessions in each of those time periods.
Okay. I would love to sit in on one of those. Like to
More
come
than
as a
welcome to
board
come
member.
sit.
If you could like throw the schedule out there whenever.
So I believe I'm for this school
Yeah.
year, but we'll connect for next school
Okay,
year for sure.
awesome.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. It's amazing. I will say it's our staff will volunteer to work with the students. We have some of our staff presenting as professional experts in their fields. And then we have outside providers also coming in. We've done safety, we've done health, we've done behavior. So it really does run the game.
I think that's an amazing program and it just builds a really good sense of community and parents like other parent friends. I mean, that's a great space to like grow
Absolutely.
relationships. So I think that's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you. And what we have said is it's really about them to fish rather than fishing for them. So if we can build their capacity and their understanding with their children, and it's not just about the youngest child, it really is about the entire family. Play and Learn is another opportunity where families, both of children who are enrolled in our program can come. Our family facilitator, Marlene Orozco, does an amazing job of these opportunities. It's about giving families the opportunity to learn how to develop and appropriately engage with their child, so that they can, whether it's language, it's fine motor skills, social emotional age when you're reading a book with them. How do you get them to maybe shift away from those electronics and engage with other children, other adults? So those are offered twice a week throughout the school year. I know Michelle will talk about it. It's also a program that we are able to offer at Ridge as well. Again, it's a program that time, and it is just a fantastic way for us to be able to connect families with one another. So providing the ability to help our families understand how to engage with their children. And then the last highlight for the ELC are family learning days and events. We've had 3 this year, where we've had 2 during the day, 1 in the evening, where families are able to come together and engage in these. We will open up the building and have different learning stations throughout the building. We also invite outside providers like the libraries to come in, so that families who are interested in those services can connect with those outside providers as well. And the feedback from families has been very positive. Have a lot of fun activities that aren't necessarily learning based. It's just an opportunity for the families to come and enjoy. We've had a Boo Bash where we had Halloween trunk or treat where the families could come and Winterfest. We had blow-ups of different winter themes where the families could go through and take pictures and just engage with games with their children. And then we have Week of the Young Child, which is through NACI, which is our national organization, and we there's a day of celebration for that week. That's enough for me.
I actually have just a few questions for you, just before we move on to the Ridge program. So just to confirm, these are half-day, morning and afternoon?
2.5 hours.
Okay, sure.
Yes,
So
morning and
the
afternoon.
323 students covers, that's, is
That's
it
our
roughly half in
total
the morning,
enrollment.
half in the afternoon? Okay, and do you have a capacity number for the building? Like how many students could you serve at one time?
So there are 20 classrooms, and they can 50 students each. So someone who's very good at math, and that would not be me,
So let me interrupt,
would
because it depends on
theoretically
what
be the maximum.
classroom, right?
Yes.
So theoretically, 20 times 15, like that's the most, right?
But not all of our. Oh, you're right.
Sorry. So that would be the most if we were running a not, right? The higher our level of need is, the smaller the class gets. So we have some classes that are 6, and they're very appropriate to be at 6. And then we have our other classrooms could go up to 15. So in theory, if we ran 300 children in the morning and 300 children in the afternoon, in theory, we could hit up to 600 if we didn't have any kids who had higher needs. And we used all of our classroom spaces.
Does that include both campuses?
No,
That's just the ELC.
that's just the ELC. Yep, and then it would be another 120 at Ridge. So in
But that would
theory,
require hiring more folks, right? And this is not current capacity, this is just the maximum capacity.
this is maximum capacity. This is what we're recommending. This is not what the needs of our students dictate. This is just, again, if we maximized the capacity of the space, that was your question. I just want.
I wonder your opinion. Do you feel you have capacity right now? Do you feel that you could definitely serve more students if you had them?
We could serve more students, yes.
Sure. And what about the ages? Is each classroom limited to a certain age, or are there multi-ages in the
It's
classroom?
3 to 5 years old. Once a student is eligible to go to kindergarten, that fall they have to go to kindergarten. So
Sure.
3 to 5 are, and those 3 to 5-year-olds are all mixed together in each of the classroom settings.
So depending on, if you have a 3-year-old in September, that child could have
Almost 3 full years.
almost 3 full years versus somebody who turns 3 in May or August, they would have, only 2 years.
That's just not consistent with, my kids went to just a church program. They were definitely by age.
Yeah.
They were 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and then the older.
So PFA classrooms are to have multi-age, and what we find is that an age skill set. So you could have a 3-year-old who has skills that are more developed than a 5-year-old, and a 5-year-old who has different skills than what you would expect from a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, and everything in between. So a developmental age based upon their birth date does not necessarily dictate their. And so what we find is by integrating all of those ages together, they can be models for one another. They're able to group students so that we can better meet their needs. And we're able to differentiate the skills that we're on, even though there's 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in those classrooms.
Okay, thank you.
So you do separate those by like skill or developmentally? No.
No, within the classrooms we're teaching students, we're going to use our data to help us determine how we're going to run small groups.
Okay.
And that's how we are able to differentiate and work with students based on their needs. Most of the time, it's within those play centers. That's how children at this age tend to learn best.
I have 2 questions. With the blended classroom for special ed, regular ed, is it 50-50? Like, do you have a number?
So again, in order for a general education environment, it's 70-30.
Okay.
General education, special education split.
So
Same
that's, it's not, because I know certain districts do like a 50-50 and it's not considered like regular education class. Like there's more legal or,
If we
categorical, like.
If we had to do that because our special ed population got larger and we had to serve those kids, then we would do that.
Yeah.
But we do try to keep it at the 70-30.
Okay. And then the bilingual Spanish classrooms, are they just Spanish speakers? Oh, it's probably not a dual language by any means, but
No.
do you have?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the early childhood level, it is slightly different from how it works at the elementary and junior high levels. So for our students eligible for a Spanish instructed classroom, a dual language classroom, because they require that language of instruction in order to be able to make progress towards their goals or towards their education. Very different from, I would like my child to learn both languages and become biliterate. That begins at the level.
And the last question, if declines, they're supposed to be in for special education, they decline special ed, can they pay tuition and still go in? Or is that just something that our district, like if the parent says, I don't want my child labeled at 3 years old, but wants the child.
We have. So I have very conversations when that happens, and it is rare. Because if they're coming to the intervention, we have knowledge that there is likely a disability.
There's something
and I
there,
can't charge, if I wouldn't want to, a child who has a disability to pay tuition for a program. So the conversation that I'm having with the parent is, it is our obligation to go through this process to identify if your child has a disability. If you don't want to go through with that process, that's your choice. But I have knowledge now that there might be a potential disability, and I can't charge you to let your child come to our program.
Definitely. Thank you.
So for the special education, there's a smaller class size, right? Is there a similar requirement or standard for bilingual or Spanish-speaking classrooms?
So
Because we have this rule of 10%
our dual
less.
classrooms are currently all are general education classrooms. So those requirements of that 70-30 applies to those regardless of language of instruction.
I mean classroom size.
Are you
though.
asking-
Because we have this requirement across the elementary schools. There's a goal to keep it below certain of the gen ed.
Into preschool.
No.
There's so many different requirements in terms of percentages and class sizes. You know, the rules are really completely different. And that is one that's applicable to these classrooms.
Thank you.
Mhm.
How about students that speak a language other than Spanish as their home language?
So we refer to our teachers as unicorns because they are certified in early childhood education, and then they must hold their endorsements in early childhood, and they must hold their endorsements in either ESL, English as Second Language Learners, or bilingual if they are one of those staff who are teaching our dual language Spanish classrooms. That is a significant amount of education that is required to teach our early childhood classrooms. So to your question, how do we address the needs of our ELs who are not Spanish speakers? Our staff are able to utilize the strategies using ESL. They might use TPR strategies. We use a lot of visuals. We're using gesturing, all of the teaching methodologies that we know are best practice for our ELs. Our staff are using those on a daily basis. Students, regardless of what language they come to us with, whether it's monolingual or trilingual, that's good, solid practice when working with children who are learning language, period.
And Melissa, if I could add, and Tom, you may need to jump in, that is by our district's choice to
It
require
is.
the ESL piece, and that was something that was implemented.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead. So they do have to hold, if they do not hold their ESL or special education endorsement, we have to have a separate person come in and provide those services. Years ago, Tom and I lived through this, when the state made a number of different changes in their requirements, it was the district's choice to say to our staff, we believe this is critical given our population. And so we worked with our staff to have a cohort so that they could obtain their ESL endorsements. If they did not hold their special education endorsement, we would have to have a separate special education teacher to come in, provide special education minutes based on each individual child's plan to meet those required minutes.
I think this is significant, the credentials that you have compared to if you just go to your,
Yes.
your church program or
Yes.
whatever. Like, do we
Yes.
advertise that, the
Yes.
qualifications of our staff?
I make sure I come into contact with understands, because sometimes that is the conversation. Well, we're already enrolled in a daycare. We really enjoy our daycare provider. They've done so much for our family. We think that they're going to be okay there and forego coming to your program. And that's when I will share. I want to make sure you fully understand what you are doing then. This is what we are able to provide to your child. That particular setting, and they do important things, but they are not able to provide you with these services because they do not hold the appropriate credentials. They're not trained to do these very specific things with your child to help them close that gap in their development.
Do you actually get referrals from, like a private preschool to
We
say,
do.
you know what, I was actually on the board of my private preschool.
We do.
And we did do that. Like if there was just, we just felt that this student needed more than we could provide, we would.
Yes.
Okay. But is that only a year or can they come at other times?
So
I remember that
depends.
being kind of a problem.
It depends. And I'll tell you why it depends. If we have openings in our diagnostic calendar from those appointments where we're doing those evaluations for children prevention, we would certainly go ahead and complete an additional screening. But the reality is that we are completing so many of those evaluations that we have to carve out specific times when we can complete those PFA and child find screenings to dedicate specifically to those pieces.
Sorry, the questions just keep
It's okay.
coming. So if a student is receiving early intervention services in preschool, how does that follow them to kindergarten?
Great question. So the education plan is written for a calendar year. So if it's written at any point during the year prior to them going to kindergarten, it would end in their kindergarten year. So if it's written in November of their final year in preschool, it will extend into November of their kindergarten year. We do transition meetings for children with the elementary buildings who have of IEP services, so that the elementary team has an understanding of the child, their needs, what services are they receiving, so that they can then begin planning from a staffing perspective, as well as just a general understanding about that child. It's also a great opportunity for the families to be able to have conversations with the elementary building before that child begins kindergarten.
As we think about kids moving to kindergarten, it's important to note that families don't have to go through an evaluation process again, right? They have an eligible child at the Early Childhood Center or at Ridge. They continue to be eligible as they move into kindergarten. And then that next would be by the elementary team. But that whole screening and diagnostic process that Melissa described, that process really sets that child on a path of services for 3 years that extend during the early childhood time into kindergarten. So they're established in elementary school before they need another evaluation. All right. Let's talk about Ridge.
All right. So, as you know, we've had the privilege of adding back to our building since last January. We now have 4 early childhood classrooms, preschool for all based classrooms, and we are at approximately 77. At the time this was written, we were at 69. So again, we continue to add students on a regular basis for our classrooms. A question before was about maximum capacity. Stated for our 4 preschool for all classrooms, it would be approximately 60 students per AM and PM session as a total of 120 students that we could potentially house for preschool for all. 2 of our classrooms are monolingual classrooms, and 2 of our classrooms are language and Spanish. And so again, the majority of the time for those classrooms is spent in Spanish instruction, with a small portion of the day spent in English as instruction. A lot of the things that Melissa talked about, the fabulous work that's happening at the ELC, transfers also to our students that are in our preschool for all classrooms at Ridge. So the day is structured the exact same way. Those experiences that they would be having at the ELC are the exact same experiences that they would be having in our building as well. So that's consistent across both buildings. And we worked very hard this year, I think, to try to provide that consistency so our families can receive the same quality of instruction and experience that anyone would have program. So that's been something that we've really strived for this year. Some of the specific experiences, because we are also housing our K-5 programs, and we've invited our preschool program to be part of those events as much as possible. We also have where we do a huge trunk or treat for our students. We have bingo night and fuel up night, pastries with parents. Whenever it's possible for us to engage our preschool families alongside our K-5 families, we do so. Our FTO is amazing, and they make sure that all of those families are invited and feel included to be part of us. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the uniqueness of bringing back our preschool classrooms at Ridge. Some of the things it was planning, obviously, that was involved in bringing those 4 classrooms back, and a lot of things that needed to be considered in order to put 4 classrooms of preschool into a K-5 building, and not having that be own center like the Early Learning Center. So things that we really had to consider as we were bringing those classrooms back, accessibility. So those 4 classrooms had been shifted to other age level classrooms, and so we had to work on making sure that of course each classroom was outfitted with the appropriate furniture, so that they would be able to access their space, making sure that the bathrooms were accessible for all of our students. Each of these rooms does have its own bathroom, and so, as we like to say, we had the teeny tiny toilets that we had to bring back to those bathrooms. Just even step stools, like making sure that the sinks were accessible so that students could wash hands. All of those kind of details, just to make sure that students were able to. And another piece was our playground. So in years past, there had been a playground that was the size for our littlest learners, and that had over the last few years with an upgraded playground. And so we needed to make sure that that playground was accessible for learners, and we also had to install a fence around the smaller playground area to make sure that students could remain safely enclosed in that space. You'll see they have the amazing courtyard that they're able to go into. So we needed to, again, provide that also very protected space for students to play. Another consideration, schedules and space. So in bringing the classrooms, it's not just about bringing the classrooms, it's about bringing all of the programming that goes along with those classrooms, again, to ensure that students have that same high quality, and making sure that that does fit into what how a K-5 building runs from to day. So we had to make considerations about, for instance, gross motor space. So it is a requirement with our Preschool for All grant that we have at least 30 minutes of gross motor time each day. So making sure that we are able to for our students, so we do have that access to that time, and fitting that into a schedule which has a packed, for instance, PE schedule that requires us to use the gymnasium. So those are some considerations. We also have our play and learn that we're having on Tuesdays, and so making sure that we have a necessary space and turning a conference room into a space that would be to be able to have that type of programming, again, for our families to be able to access just like they could at the ELC. We have to consider, for instance, special schedule, because we our teachers are at least once a week, a 30-minute plan time. We needed to make sure that we were integrating our art schedule. Our art teacher is the one that provides the for our students during that plan time for our teachers. So integrating that as part of our schedule. So again, those considerations for schedule and space were also important to consider. Population, I think with the best of intentions, we were looking to initially have students who were on the south side of the school district served more at the Ridge site, versus students being served at the north end site. But as we heard, we get students all throughout the year. And so we need to place them in best fits their need. And that doesn't mean that always mean that I live on the south side. And so over the course of the year, as we continue to build the program at Ridge, our population is now very much like the ELC, but it is spread, students are spread across the district. So transportation is something that we continue to look at, because our students do longer routes, because we are now serving a larger area for our students. But again, it's the same situation at the ELC for both. I wanted to highlight some of the amazing connections that I know also at the ELC, with having Holmes be right there connected, that there are some amazing connections that can happen with other students. And I want to, we have had the opportunity to also make some amazing connections between our classrooms. So having our 5th grade students go down to the early childhood classrooms to do global play, and see them excited about those interactions that they could have with students. We had one of our early childhood teachers that was doing a whole study on plants, and now they are starting to grow the starter plants for our garden club, for our older students. And so it's a really amazing connection that we're able to make with programming. And we continue to do that in other ways, continue to build that. But again, little things like that hopefully will help our students feel connected to one another, as we bring in more kiddos that are our littlest learners.
Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do is talk about where we go from here and what are the kinds of things to consider as you think about how early learning fits into the higher scope of your planning for the district. Because we certainly run some great programs, but we also know that of what we do pre-K 8. So I have received questions on a number of occasions about full day. Okay, I have received questions on a number of occasions, thank you, about full day. So I do want to talk about Preschool for All expansion. And Preschool for All expansion does give the ability to take our current Preschool for All grant and write it for X number of seats for full day. I want to be very clear about the requirements for that. Because as Melissa said, and I was going to make this point here, but this is there, right? This is an educational experience. So we want to be sure that we have a of what it would mean if we looked at full day programming. So full day programming would follow elementary hours, at least the number of hours at elementary. if you look at the first bullet that I have here, these are the students who would qualify first for full day programming. And these are the students who are already the first to come in, right? So if you are homeless, if you have an IEP, if you are at or below 50% of the poverty level, or you have child welfare involvement, you are the first students to come in. So that means that for the most part, we would be taking existing population and making experiences full day for them, right? It would be unlikely that the majority of our future full day kids, if we did decide to do that, would be new kids, right? We have this is the group that's making up our IEP and at-risk population now. In addition to targeting these groups of kids, there are some new requirements that go along with a full day. And so that's this comprehensive services idea. Now, we do great services, but this is much more comprehensive. So now we're talking about partnerships in order to find parents and families what they call home providers. And it doesn't mean in their home, but like finding them a medical home, finding them a dental home, finding them a mental health home if they require those services. So we would have to have outside agencies in all of those areas. Also, of course, the breakfast, lunch, snack. So implications as you're thinking about this from a board perspective are really, as you look at long-term facilities, you're doing, classroom and other space would be necessary. Significant staffing increases could be potential implications. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that on the next slide, just to kind of paint it the way it would look if it was done. And then looking at this, as I said, as part of long-term facilities planning. Because we did retrofit those rooms at Ridge, but that would be significant if you look to increase that, right? If we took our existing program, which right now has 18 classrooms, and we said we're going to existing program, that would require an additional 18 classrooms. So you're talking about another building, right? And also additional spaces for related services providers, coaches, specials, either another building or some kind of reconfiguration of what we have that would make better usage of some of the spaces that we currently have. But if you're thinking about classrooms, it's that many more classrooms. So we would also have to have additional related services providers, and here I'm talking about speech, psych, social work, OT, PT. We would require additional. They are required in the grant, not required for half day, but required for full day. We would also need to have specials, because now if kids are here all day, we can't build beginning and end of the day when kids aren't there. Right. So now we need to have more, in addition to the 18 classroom teachers, need to have additional staff who can cover teacher plan time. And then the gross motor space piece. So I touched on the staffing with the 18 additional teachers. Required to have 1 additional instructional leader or instructional coach, 2 to 3 additional educators. Those are based on the numbers enrolled. And then certified staff for specials. We would also have to adopt an additional social emotional learning curriculum. We do use a social emotional learning curriculum now. There are additional requirements for the full day. Talked about the partnerships, contracting or collaborating with qualified mental health providers or consultants, connecting families to that would, those are new responsibilities that the district doesn't currently have. Transportation, Michelle talked about, that would continue, potentially to be an issue. And that's why I have on there, it's also an issue currently. And then other considerations would be, the additional meals, additional memorandums of understanding with not only additional providers, but potentially other, other childcare centers, and then the referral pieces. So this is something that is possible in the future, but as you consider it with your whole planning, everything that you're planning, the demographic study, the the facilities study, all of that. This needs to be part of that whole comprehensive discussion for pre-K 8.
Thank you.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was
Yeah.
I was gonna say I appreciate you sharing this because these were the exact questions I would have, and I appreciate you proactively laying this out, and I appreciate you going through it at Ridge, because if it is a direction that we want to go, you know what it took. So thank you. And can I just ask one question? And Tom, I don't expect to have an answer on this now, but assume that getting early interventions, early education, even for half a day, carries through to performance through 8th grade. If there's any data that we can use to support that, and adding on even more time to that, and I would imagine we would have even more families willing to come the whole day was matching their kids' schedule at,
Sure.
maybe even their homeschool, not just Ridge. So
Yeah, I'm assuming the group can speak better to the impact of early intervention. There's awesome data out there. When we went to full day K and built the ELC, so we can pull that together, they probably have it off the top of their heads.
So sometimes that's hard to prove because you're proving the negative, what
Sure.
might have more poorly if you didn't do this. But we have looked at some of our kids over the years. Again, you're at this point talking about an entirely at risk and population of kids with disabilities. So they are prepared for kindergarten in a way that a lot of kids who are in, say, family daycares or others are not. That doesn't mean that a lot of them still don't have the prerequisite skills that we'd like them to have. So we can certainly look. I know that, Tom, we looked at pulling some iReady of kids who had been, who had gone through the early learning center. And so we can pull that again, I think, if that's something that you'd like to see.
yeah, not anything immediate, but it just goes into one of the reasons that we would invest in something like this. But I do agree it's a very important consideration program. It touches on all of the things that we're doing in the long range planning. So,
And there's certainly plenty of non-District 59 data, right?
Sure.
Of national research. It's there's tons of research. Dollar you spend here, you save this many dollars on prison construction, all of these other things. So there's a lot of research out there, in addition to whatever we could pull for our district. And again, we're happy to look for that if you'd like to see it.
I just wanted to follow up on this. So the Preschool for All grant, does that cover staff, cover support staff? What is it? So
the Preschool for All grant covers, it requires us to put in one teacher and one assistant class. It also covers parts of leader salary. It covers some materials and supplies. Transportation is a big chunk. Thank you. So it covers a range of things. There are things that are required that we have to put in there.
Right. So I guess my question is, of this list, if you rewrite the Preschool for All grant to be full day, what on this list stays the same? And obviously classroom space, that overhead, that expands, but how much stays covered?
So I am telling you that we're required to put one teacher for each classroom.
Our budget?
No, on the PFA grant.
On that.
Okay. But what I will also say is that the amount it's for one teacher and one assistant is not what we pay one teacher and one assistant.
That was going to be my next
question. Yeah. So there's 2 adults in each classroom that are on this grant. We don't actually cover 2 adults in each classroom. So there's a lag, right? We cover a significant, the district pays out of state and local funds plenty for what PFA covers. And that is expected as part of PFA, right? There's the in-kind pieces, or not in-kind pieces, but there's pieces. But these are, so it would, if we wrote full day, however many full day. So right now we write the grant for 180 slots, right? 180 children who can come in through PFA. Now, some of our kids with IEPs also qualify for PFA. This kind of meshing of the programs. But that 180 slots, again, if we went full day, would not necessarily really cover that 180. It would likely double the money, but
because we would have double the tier, right?
Right.
So the grant would expand, but it would stay sort of a prorated
So
rate.
so it's not about double the teachers, it's about the number of kids.
So the money that is allotted is based on per head.
So doing full-time doesn't get you more money from the PFA program.
No,
That's what I'm kind of dancing
There
around
would be
here, right?
more money, but it's still not going to cover the full cost
That's right.
of the need of what it takes to run the program.
So maybe a related question, maybe that's where you're getting at, is if did we run a set scenarios on, okay, we're going to have a full-time program for 200 or 300, whatever is going to be the amount, different scenarios, what's going to be additional cost for the grant?
We can
including all of like all of the costs that we outlined.
Sure. So I mean, we could share right now exactly what the grant covers on each person's salary who's on there. And then you would compare that to what actual salaries are. That's an easy comparison for us to be able to do.
Okay, not even a per person salary, just, hey, if we're planning on expanding, like, okay, we're going to start with how many kids would be planning to 300 full-time? Since we're thinking about every kid would go, right?
So my recommendation would be that we not look at expanding like that.
But we need to think about stable state, not how we're going to be slowly transitioning, but
Sure.
stable state in, let's just say, 5 years. If we're going to do that, because when we're making decisions, we need to think about stable state after we implement something, what's going to be the long-term impact to the district. See, I mean, if the stable state is 300 kids full-time, okay, great. For those 300 kids, what's going to be the total? Not per person or per head or per kid. Okay, total. We're going to get for all of these. And I mean, this is how much money we're going to get. At the end, we're going to have to pay extra, like this much, cover whatever's going to be the delta. That's what I'm curious.
Okay.
So that would be the impact to the taxpayers.
So
Sure.
this is, I really appreciate when we had this conversation about planning for this presentation, it was, the need is to embed it within our long range facilities. Yes. That has to be considered. The other piece that I would be really cautious of is that is grant-based money, which is never guaranteed money.
Mm-hmm.
So even if Elizabeth were to write the grant, there's no guarantee that we get it. There's some good likelihood. And then there's no guarantee that that's funded at that level year after year.
Yep.
So I think as a district need to look at what is that cost. Should the grant go away, are we willing to continue and sustain it if we're going to invest this amount into infrastructure?
Very
So
good
those
point.
are a lot of considerations, all of which are not going to be answered tonight, but definitely things for you to chew on and think about, because the programming piece is going to be a large part of the long range
Yes.
planning process.
Thank you, Dr. Brazan, for
encompasses all
clearing.
that.
I was not an ask for.
Yes.
If
again,
we're
all those
thinking about
things.
long term,
Yes.
that's when we would love to compare that.
So for us, PFA right now we are considered a preschool desert, which is why we were
Yep.
able to increase the number which means that we do not have enough seats for 80% of the kids who need them. With the seats we wrote for this year, we are now 7%. So we're at a place where now, and we still have some open seats, but we're at a place where we probably can't increase the number of seats a whole bunch more and expect them to continue to fund more and more seats, right? We're kind of hitting that threshold for where the state would stop saying you're a community that needs that funding. So that would be a consideration as we move forward too.
Yep. The preschool desert will be for including all of the private preschools all around the area, right?
Yeah, so they look at, they look at all kinds of daycares, all kinds of DCFS licensed facilities, could be in everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask if any other nearby districts are doing a full day program like this for preschool?
I don't, do you know anybody's doing one?
Aware of any currently.
I can certainly,
I just like
Ask
to know.
around.
I mean, I'm glad to be the first, but just kind of wondering how it's working for everyone else.
I think one of the challenges too to keep in mind is the staffing component. More than in education in general, that there is a staffing shortage. And when you look at early educators, it is not immune to that. And so when you start adding in additional requirements to what we already have, it becomes more complex and more difficult to find the staff that meet all of these different requirements to fulfill those obligations. That's a reality that we feel even right now not having full day programming.
And I will add just locally, the number of districts that are just now implementing full day kindergarten is staggering and is a major issue. We are very fortunate that we have had full day K so that we can even be considered, because that is, and again, it's taxing on now doubling your staff, let alone the facilities constraints, which is really taxing some districts in our local area. So we're very fortunate to have the ELC
Absolutely.
and the additional classroom, as well as the amazing staff that we currently have, which is, they are absolute unicorns.
If I can just go back down in history a little bit, I believe before we had the ELC, is it correct that our preschool programs were held in our, right? Or I mean, I think when my kids were at that age, I believe I checked into it, and I believe they would have gone to John Jay. I'm in the Frost area, but their preschool would have been John Jay. So when we were doing that, were we still considered a preschool desert, or was that kind of covered because the program was throughout the district?
So you are correct. Way back started in the district, we were in satellites. So we were up to 6 different elementaries at one point. And it varied in terms of the number of classrooms in each of those buildings. The concept of the newer, and so it hasn't been part of the reasoning for how they're allocating funds up until the last few years. So back in the day, it was a piece of how that was determined. There were other criteria that were utilized. A lot of it had to do with how well could you write your grant. Your case that you were going to do a good job at implementing a high quality program. And we did that.
Our current governor really is driving a lot of the focus on early childhood. It's been really one of his cornerstones of his campaign, and that's where the whole study around the preschool desert really came to be, to advocate for more funding. So it is newer, and it's been a positive for us to get that.
and that's important. Monies and not
State,
federal.
not federal, so we don't have to. Okay.
Thank you so much for coming. As you can see, we are all very interested in preschool. And it works. Preschool works. I have a million questions, but I have one really important question that I think is relative right now. And I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball. If this day, based on your experience, do you think we're going to grow beyond our space in the next few years?
If we stay at half day. So again, now there's a lot going on with our facilities. And if we look at the potential of, we were talking about this in my previous district, we had an early learning center and we expanded into satellite sites. That's possible where we are with what we have now, right? I think there's really no way to project that without thinking about that facilities plan across the district. There's just, I mean, there's space out there, but it would be jointed. The smaller number of classrooms you put in each location. It's very similar to the conversations you all have had about singletons at the elementary level. You know, it's as hard to be a singleton as it is to be a singleton in first grade. So the broader facilities plan relative to those things that, you know, that singleton piece is going to be important for early learning too.
I mean, with the current facilities, like how you have it set up right now, do you see yourself having kids that, as many kids that would necessitate a change like that?
Melissa, can I ask what's the number of?
Yes.
I know you have that handy.
So we currently have, we are at 52% non-special education out of the 401 students.
So I think to maybe get to your point, Sarah, I think it's going to be based on district priorities. If we served only those students served based on required services, I think the answer is no, we would not run out of space. I think that we maximize the use of our space by offering out tuition-based preschool. It also really affords us the opportunity to create blended classrooms, which we know is really beneficial. So I think it's going to be a matter of like priority and how we really see that. If we saw a massive surge of special education needs in the coming years, we have to look at things differently. But I think the way we are managing it, I think we have sufficient space. But I think it's about how you want to scale the program, if you want to change the program, if you want programs to get closer to where kids live, if that becomes a priority out of long range planning, that changes how you structure it. And I think those are important conversations that we need to have in order to even make a prediction like that, would be my statement. At status quo as is, I would say the answer would be no. I don't think we'll run out of space. If we want to re-envision it, the answer is possibly yes.
Was that your presentation?
We're done.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
All right, we're going to take about 1 minute. So we're going to reboot the audio and then we will get prepped for the monthly updates. So thank you so much to all three of you. Appreciate your time and expertise on that.
Okay, I think you can start monthly updates.
Awesome. So we are going to jump into just some key updates from the district. Starting off with We briefly talked about our long-range facilities planning in our Facilities and Finance Committee, and we'll talk a little bit at the board committee part of the agenda. But just wanted to make sure that district-wide, we're all aware that we are really engaging in our long-range facilities process. The steering committee has met. Our goal is for our staff and our community to be aware to kick off at the start of next school year, very, very early in September. So look for more information coming out about that and how we will get representation to serve on that committee. And obviously be very inclusive of this important work like we just talked about for early childhood. And that will be inclusive of our demographic enrollment study that is underway with our partners at RSP. And we are tentatively scheduled to have a June presentation for the board, pending everything moving smoothly, to really get a clear sense of our current boundaries, historical information, and where our current enrollment lies, which projections will be a big part of that and may also help facilitate the conversation that we just talked about with early childhood. I did want to make the board and our community aware about the Department of Education has recently released a statement requesting that all school districts sign a letter indicating that they will not be violating any Title VI requirements, inclusive of implementing anything related to DEI. As of this afternoon, our state superintendent, Dr. Tony Sanders, actually released something from the State Board of Education asking for greater clarity and indicating that we are in compliance with Title VI and for further definition as to what that means about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that would be a violation of Title VI. So we have not, as a school district, received anything directly from the Department of Education. I want to be very clear to our community about that. I know there's a lot coming out in the news, but we have not received anything directly. We are currently working with our legal teams as well as the State Board of Education. I know the Illinois Association of School Boards just released something as well today. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern, but we are keeping abreast of that. And I think the letter from our State Board of Education will help clear the path for us to move forward. And then, as you heard earlier, we had a presentation from NSSEO on their proposed budget. They are also underway in their strategic planning, which continues. I know, Lucas, you'll probably have some more information to share during that committee report out, but the superintendents of the member districts will actually be meeting tomorrow with Dr. Schnorr to review the part about superintendents and the layers of governance that have been discussed as part of strategic planning. So I want to just give an update to the board on that piece.
Terry, could you describe Title
Sure.
VI?
Yeah, so Title VI basically means that you're not going to violate anything in regards to race. It's a discrimination title. So basically, what I believe is coming out in terms of this is not favoring or leading to any practices that would unfairly discriminate against people based on race. I don't know if it goes into race, color, and national origin. Thank you. So that is what they are couching that DEI piece under. We need a lot more clarity as to what that even means before we can clearly define it. We are governed by Title VI and have been and follow that. It's in our school code, board policies. It is something that we fully have in practice and in policy. Appreciate you asking that. All right. From our Associate Superintendent's Department, we are fully underway with our Accountability and Assessment 5 Essential Survey, which is the survey required by the state that is administered out to all students, all staff, and our parents. You can see the period for that survey is closed. We had 98% of our students grades 4 through 8 participate. That is a marker that then becomes part of our Illinois State Report Card. And we had 88% of our staff participate in that. So it is one of the longest, most consistent surveys that we've had over the longest period of time to really have data talking about our culture, our climate, student safety, et cetera. And then we meet the threshold for our parents, so we'll be able to get that data back from our parents. Each school has to hit at least 20% in order to get their data back. So thank you to our families for meeting that threshold. State testing is underway. I'm sure many of your students are talking about it. So the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, as required by the state in grades 3 through 8, is currently underway. And thank you to our schools, our students, supporting that important assessment. And we continue to plan for our summer professional learning, which will be here before we know it.
Can I do a shout out real quick about
Please.
We had in elementary schools, I don't know if other students do or other teachers do this, but we write notes to our kids and they open them every day. Do a great job. And, you know, it's just like uplifting and something fun they get every day. So I know my kids have done it in the past. We did it this year. So just in case nobody's doing it or somebody is not doing it, they can maybe jump on that bandwagon.
I love that. Parent and family encouragement always helps, and getting our kids at ease when they have to sit in front of that rather long assessment is always a positive thing. So I appreciate that. That's a great. From our business services, so our insurance committee has met and we are looking at our insurance renewals. You can see our proposed rates from our group there, and we are finalizing those plans, hoping to find some cost savings. There has been a substantial increase in pharmaceuticals. All of those impact what we end up paying out for those benefits. Voluntary vision will hopefully be offered at no cost to the district, and we are seeing workers' compensation increase due to salaries and additional staffing, which is a good and a bad thing, right? Additional cost, but we're glad to have those additional staff members. Brentwood project is sailing along very smoothly. It is on time and on budget. So very excited. We meet every Tuesday at the trailer with Nicholas on site, and the pictures it's just absolutely fascinating to see how that project is moving along. And as fast as it seems to be moving, they will be utilizing every day up until the opening of next school year to really make sure everything on the interior is complete occupancy for the start of next school year. All right. Curriculum and instruction. You have heard a lot about our kindergarten council. They have completed a refreshed vision for kindergarten, as well as really developing their action plan that will be explored and further refined this school year. And there will be a summer board weekly packet this week. And then June 11th, we plan on a presentation from members of the Kindergarten Council to really share and showcase the work that they've done over the past year plus a little bit, which we're really excited about because it ties directly in with what you just heard about early childhood, that transition and ensuring that continuity from early childhood into kindergarten and setting up all success as they embark on their start in District 59 is really a priority for us. Our literacy nights, another plug for those. You've seen communication come out. Those are set for the 14th, 15th, and 21st of this month at each of our junior highs, 30 p.m. So we hope many, many families and students can come out and join us. And very exciting, this weekend we have our annual spring BPAC event. This year it's going to be held at Byrd Elementary from 11 to 12:30 on Saturday. Exciting alert for Dr. Perdomo, I heard. Caught wind of that today. So please come by and catch a picture with Dr. Perdomo. The theme is BPAC Springs into Action. HR, we are well underway with our hiring and interviewing. So thank you to all of our hiring managers who are conducting interviews, doing screenings, looking at resumes, all of that stuff, and then really starting to offer out those positions to some of our very highly qualified candidates. It's a nice, smooth season this year because we're not adding so many additional positions. So we're really able to focus in on just retirements or resignations, which is really great to be able to focus on a little feeling of calm during this time of year. And then, as the board is aware, collective bargaining and our DEA friends in the back, collective bargaining continues. It is going along very well. There have been 14 evening sessions completed, and we are very optimistic that we are nearing the final stages of this process. Student services and support. So, as we talked about this year, we had a heavy focus on our professional learning communities. We have partnered with PLC Plus and really supporting our lead activators at each of our grade level teams. So we've already begun to plan for year 2 with PLC Plus. We met with our administrative team to get feedback. There was a session that Dr. Ossel was able to facilitate on our institute, which really provided lead activators across the district time to come together and really learn and plan together. So all of the first grade lead activators were able to be together for the first time, all the second grade, third grade, et cetera, which just in a district our size does not happen often enough. And so we're looking at more to happen in year 2. Summer professional learning is also underway through the Student Services Department. They offer a number of opportunities for special education, for MTSS, SEL, safety, and we even open those, many of them up to our newly hired staff as well. So it's just another opportunity for some early onboarding and bringing them into part of the 59 family. And as we did at the start of this year, we had our parent education series. So we're hoping to plan for another series in 25-26 and to continue our communication and engagement to hopefully see more families out with relevant topics that are important to them. And then, as you are also aware, and for our community, May 7th, immediately preceding our regular board meeting at 6 p.m., we will have the Safety and Discipline Committee meeting that early on our school resource officer program. Director Malik will be leading that. Our SROs are invited to attend as well. We hope to see many of our families and our parent committees to come back and be engaged in that meaningful conversation. And last but not least, Innovation Staff Advisory Team continues to work on exploring in the classrooms. So excited to see those in the hands of our students, and under Ben Gray's direction, really getting that feedback and what device is going to be recommended for each grade level in particular. As you are aware, that has been reported to you, tariffs are another hot topic that we are not immune from as a school district. So as of right now, Lenovo, who would be our company to partner with, they have put a hold on quotes. Obviously, as of this afternoon, there was updated information about the tariffs. So a 90-day hold. So we are getting cautiously optimistic that in this window, barring any additional change, that by May we will have solidified quotes for the board to take action on. Should further changes occur, we will keep the board abreast of those. But it has literally changed from one from these companies, and obviously certain tariffs are still in place, some are not. Where we get them from, where they're produced, each of the parts, it is a very complicated piece that really impact our ability to get best pricing. My hope is that it doesn't impact our ability to get an on-time order in the hands of our students and our staff. We also have the team has created a survey about device controls for our families. So that will be going out soon so we can get more input and really see what controls we want to have in place to give access to for our families while at home. And then our last piece, Skyward. We have given updates and talked about as a district that Skyward is going to be sunsetting their current platform. We utilize Skyward for our student system as well as our financial management system and our human resources system. We are a robust 30+ year user of Skyward. We are deeply invested with this company. In fact, I would say, and probably attest to this in the back, and shout out to Kathy Savage as well. I would say that we have been heavy influencers into where Skyward is today and how it functions. So the new platform is called Skyward Cumulative. Their anticipated goal is by 2027, all school districts are migrated over. We are a very heavy user. So our initial planning was for that migration to happen this summer 2025. Based on the support that we are receiving, based on the complexity of the migration, based on wanting to truly set this up for end users, we are looking at a modified timeline and pushing that out to summer of 2026, which will allow us to simultaneously run the new system as well as the current system and ensure that we have the redundancies so that things don't slip through the cracks. So many thanks to Janet and to Kathy because they are really spearheading this, but this deeply impacts all the way out to our end users, from report cards, our parents, office managers. Every single department is impacted and touched with Skyward. It really is the core of how we function. So we want to do it well and we want to do it right and give the time to that. So appreciate the feedback, and we'll be rolling to the staff just to let them know about an updated timeline for that process.
So does that look at like parents changing anything next year? Probably not, right?
No, this
It
would all be
everything
prepped.
is
It'll give us more
you
time for
guys are doing
yes.
everything in the background.
The back end
Right,
really
to
create
see
a
how
much
it's
more
working between
seamless
the two.
transition
Okay.
to the end users, including our families. Because it will be, now there's a lot of perks to going to the upgrade. There's going to be a lot of benefits to it, but there's going to be some things that 30 years of using the same system, and we've seen some upgrades in between, but you become very things, and now we will be asked to do things differently, and change is hard. So we will be supporting people through it. And I believe that's all we had.
Okay, and then 5.2, the pressure.
Sure. I'm going to kick this off and then turn it over to the board for discussion. So TR and Michelle reached out about really wanting to refresh and bring back our strategic plan. So internally, our 5-year strategic plan has been our guiding goals each year. And, you know, when we say KPI every time during our student benchmarking, we're referring to our one of our goals of our strategic plan. So, but we recognize with board turnover, and we are in year 4 of that plan, it would probably be a timely piece to look at bringing that back to the board, possibly looking at a partnership with, we partnered with a consultant previously. So my understanding is right before there was a process that was ran. The board interviewed 3 different consultants to work with, landed on working with CEC with a partnership with Perry Soderwell. Thank you. Led that work, engaged the community. I know, Michelle, you were part of that. Nikki, were you also a part of that? Many of our members here, SLT, and some of our staff, I'm sure, were a part of that as well. So what they have asked is for the board to discuss. Are you interested in looking at working with a partner again to do just a more simplified refresher version of the current plan, given that we're doing long range facilities planning as well, kind of doing those things in tandem. So I will turn it to the board for discussion on that.
Yeah, I think this is more with the new board getting seated, not most of us not having participated in the process in terms of like from a board perspective. It'd be like more of a board level workshop thing to help us through the next year as we see out the last year of the strategic plan, going alongside with a lot of the work that happens with the long range planning. So like not to have to duplicate a lot of that work, at least from a board perspective, as we look to start the process of our next strategic plan. So this may be like a workshop or 2 with, and I think it would probably be most helpful with the person who, or the company who put together the previous plan, because they have like the historical, just be there to help us, you know, with so many new board members kind of see through. I know the ISB does their thing with, you know, board evaluations and stuff, but this would be more like the actual work we're doing, more relevant. So part of it, so I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, no, I was part of that process. It was a very comprehensive process, and I did get to know Mr. Saltwhittle, Perry. He was great, and I actually, you know, after we talked, I did reach out to Perry. He's still out there. He's about to publish his 3rd book. You know, he's definitely he's working on Arlington Heights District 25 strategic plan, so he's very much in there. He really enjoyed working with our district. That's the first thing he said. So I think it makes a lot of sense to because this board has not really examined that plan at all. I think it's really important that we look at the goals, core values, and mission of this board, especially as we head into long-range planning. I think, something we could probably do in a session or two, over, maybe over the summer. So I'm definitely in favor. I think it'll be a good way for us to come together.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, same. I think that revamping or at least looking at the strategic plan and seeing how it's going to fit into our long-term plan, doing it all at once is a good idea.
100%. I mean, we incorporate, do you have refreshes, revisits way more often than every 5 years, and having a long-term plan for long-term facilities plan being made, which would go above and beyond what our current strategic plan is, I think is unacceptable, just leaving it without it. So 100%, I think we definitely doing a refresher. Doesn't have to be a full-fledged, just a refresher, just reviewing what we have, what's the best practice, maybe, getting a temperature check on the community. I think that would be very well appreciated by everybody.
Okay.
No, I just, when we did it, it was right before COVID. We implemented it, but then COVID hit. And I don't know I know us as a board being new, when we speak, when we look at all these things, when we have presentations, the strategic plan is not verbally spoken about. I know that it is thought about when everything's going, when admin's doing all the planning, but I think us as a board needs to know what we're, listening for, or looking for.
Yeah, what everybody said.
All right, good. No, you'll be really involved. Okay, so we'll figure out next steps, and it just might be an extra meeting or two along the way, or we can maybe fit into one of our committee of the holes or whatnot. Okay. Next, we got the consent agenda. We have items 6.1 through 6.5. Does anybody need anything pulled from the consent agenda? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Moved and second. Ready? All right. Roll call vote, please.
Eddie, I. Johnson.
Aye.
Kitzinger.
Aye.
Notini.
Aye.
Sager.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. We can move on to 7.1, the approval of the closing date for the 2024. So do you want to add any context to this?
No, it's just an annual thing. Once we're I'm going to knock on wood.
Yeah.
Once we
I know
believe
gotta
we
do
are
it this
past
month.
emergency, it is required that we then finalize the calendar. And as we have used no emergency days, that's what this context.
All right, so I just need a motion to approve the last day of attendance for student and staff will be June 2nd, 2025.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any questions, discussion?
Yes. Our next year's calendar, right? For the love of me, I can't find it. When I was looking at Holmes Junior High,
It's on the district for sure.
it's on a district
Yes.
calendar.
I will show you.
Then I'm very happy that it's there, because I've
no, it
got a
isn't.
question. I went to my daughter's school just for a reference, and I could not locate it.
I don't typically look on the full chat.
For anyone who is listening, if you're on our district website, go all the way to the bottom, hit calendar, and then if you hit year at a glance, you'll find the traditional and the pre-K calendar in English, Spanish, and Polish.
My only concern is that
For both.
parents are used to looking at their school's calendar, and I know I jumped to May, June, July, August, and I find that but I mean, that's what parents need when they're planning the trips, vacations. So can we make sure like I'm not sure who each school's calendar, but like, we need to make sure that those are updated too.
And you're looking at like the actual, not the piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean the
part.
actual
Yeah,
calendar.
the actual calendar of
Yes.
events.
Yeah, and I will say our office managers do not put in advance, like they work 1 year at a time. So that's why we have the list view. Maybe we can make that.
But the
So at the top
start
of the
and end-
calendars, it does have the year at a glance that you click on, which is really what I think most parents find helpful. As opposed to having to flip through the months, which might be easier for you. That way you can see all the breaks kind of in one. And
something
it
to
is
make
on
it
each of the
easier for-
schools.
Yeah, so for all the parents out there on the school calendar, it's a button above the school calendar.
Yep, the year at a
The year at
glance,
a
that's what
glance
you're
button.
looking for.
I'm not there. No. I see it. The one I'm looking at.
We good?
Yeah, let's vote.
Okay. We had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Everybody opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Oh, I like that. That's so
Next,
much
we
fun.
have a proclamation for Volunteer Appreciation Week.
Okay, what do we
Anybody like
do? We
to-
just read it?
Anybody like to read this? Sure.
Which part do I read?
No.
All of
Now,
the
therefore,
whereases?
Sorry.
The bottom part.
Now, therefore,
Oh, now
Sorry,
therefore be it
Michael.
resolved that April 21st through 25th, 2025 is hereby proclaimed Public School Volunteer Appreciation Week within Community Consolidated School District 59 in recognition of the contributions made by volunteers working throughout our school district during the 24-25 for the benefit of students, staff, and our community. Approved this 9th day of April, 2025.
Second. All right, any discussion,
I
questions?
have a question. So yeah, I kind of remember this when I was like PTO mom. Does each school do something to recognize their volunteers? Is there any consistency to that? I mean, I know at Frost we had something, and in junior high, but I would just hope that. I mean, can we encourage that? To
Encourage that. I think you just did. So
so whenever I visit a school, should I ask them what they do?
I'm happy to compile and
Yeah, I just
individual
think
events
it's so important, what volunteers do, and it's nice to just. I mean, I think we had at Frost we had a lunch, and then anyone who was like, had a fifth grader got a present. It was just really nice to have a little something. But I don't know that every school does it, so just asking.
At Claremont, when I was on the PTO, at the PTO, they put something together with staff.
Okay, so I think at Frost it was mostly the PTO that was being honored, so actually did it for us. But whatever works.
Okay, any other questions? All right, if not, we can do all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you to all of our volunteers. Without
you.
you, we would be, and our kids would probably have no fun.
All right, so another one, we have a, where's the proclamation for Staff Appreciation Week?
I'll do this one, and I'll read the
Sager.
whereas because there's only
Oh,
four
no.
of them. We don't do
No,
that.
That's fine.
Whereas preparing students to be successful for life is the mission of Community Consolidated School District 59, and whereas the economic future of our community, state, and nation is dependent upon a knowledgeable, and whereas the week of May 5th through 9th, 2025 has been designated as National Teacher Appreciation Week, whereas members of the Board of Education desire to recognize teachers and all employees of School District 59 for their dedicated contributions. Now, therefore, it be it of April 2025, on behalf of the residents, parents, and students, and especially members of the Board of Education, the week of May 5th through 9th, 2025 is hereby proclaimed as Staff Appreciation Week within Community Consolidated School District 59. Now, therefore, be it further resolved that the President and Secretary of the Board of Education will sign the proclamation attached hereto, and a certified copy of the proclamation will be sent to each school within Community Consolidated School District 59.
and I'd love to second.
Any questions? What
Staff
better?
and teachers, you rock.
Yes, and what better way to show our appreciation than having a new contract?
Yeah, right. And I hope that the PTOs are all doing something for the teachers that week. I mean, I know that we always did.
I want to say that we really use this opportunity when we say staff, we really mean all educators. So that is our custodial team, our our office staff, our administrators, our teachers, our support staff, our nurses, everyone who plays a part in ensuring that work. This team out here. It's really appreciated. So this building, we do a luncheon or breakfast for every school. So thank you, board, for that. And so we get one for this building. Every building gets the opportunity to be celebrated. So it's greatly appreciated.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion passes.
Yay. Thank you, teachers. And all staff.
Okay, next we have the mobile units at John Jay. I just a motion to approve the request for facility at John Jay Elementary School.
So moved.
I'll second.
Move in second. Any questions? If not, this is not money, right? This is just that we can use it, or is it money involved?
No, it is money. So we all have to.
We'll do a
All right. Chesney,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
Eddie, I, Johnson,
aye.
Gitzinger,
Aye.
Notini,
Aye.
Sager.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes.
Sorry, I know I'm too late to ask a question, but where is the money amount? I don't see it.
Ron, do you want to add? Is that going to come following?
Yeah. So we're looking at is the mobile unit is going to be about $255,000. Then we have to look at the ADA pieces as well as any sort of covering for students to walk. And we're only getting approximate costs right now on hooking up the electric and water. So there's a lot of moving pieces to it. We're anticipating about $350,000.
So this is just moving?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
my apologies. I thought it was
Okay.
for both. So
Okay.
next month, will we be bringing back for the purchase?
Oh, the purchase no, the purchase should be, oh yeah, wait, hold on. I'm sorry.
You gave us that
Thank you.
dollar amount.
We got the dollar amount.
some
That's what I thought
point
was in here. I
earlier,
apologize.
but
Yeah, I was expecting the yes just for the mobile. So the mobile would have been $255,000,
Yeah.
but that doesn't include at this time some of the ADA pieces.
Okay, so this piece here, though, is that do we need to do a modified motion to include the price that has been previously shared and discussed
Yes, let me look.
for transparency?
Yeah, well,
All right, let me get the dollar amount specific.
Thank you. I know we discussed it last month, so I want to make sure.
are we concerned that the cost because of everything else that's going on in the world?
That's why we have it locked in right now. Yeah.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay, real quick.
I'm all over the place here.
Board book. What do I do? So it's, but am I going to? Okay.
And then if this gets amended, then I'll send it to you guys to re-sign.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
The base cost of the modular will be $244,924. No, just for the one.
One unit, two classes.
Correct. 924.
Doing motion on this item? Is that how it works?
I think let's make an amended motion to but with the associated costs, purchase cost of $244,924.
924.
Okay, so I motion that we, let's see, be resolved on the 9th day of April 2025. The 59 Board of Education hereby approves the request for usage of a temporary facility at John Jay Elementary School, representing a cost of $244,924. Is there a specific company we have to say, or just the total? Okay.
Okay.
Get a second?
Second.
All right, another roll call vote.
All right. We're going to go straight.
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
Eddie? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Kitzinger?
Aye.
Notini?
Aye.
Sager?
Motion passes. We can move on to the approval of the District 59 Education Foundation donation. So good rhyme. I will. So be it resolved. Be it resolved on the 9th day of April 2025, the Community Board of Education approves the donation from the District 59 Education Foundation to CCSD59 schools totaling $7,770. The superintendent shall communicate to the District 59 Education Foundation in writing expressing the appreciation of the members of the Board of Education, and this donation shall be listed in the official minutes of the meeting as included above. Get a second?
Second.
All right.
Zach? Aye. Eddie? Oh, aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Kitzinger?
Aye.
Notini?
Aye.
Sager?
Aye.
Chesney?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion passes. We can move on to discussion items. So 8.1 is our food service contract.
So after completing the first year of our contract with Organic Life, according to state law, we can have an option for yearly renewal not to exceed 4 additional 1 years. We did have one bidder last year, and it was Organic Life. So we are recommending that we're going to renew it this year with a 2.9% increase.
Any questions?
I have a question. A meeting or two ago, we talked about students. I don't know if they had a survey or how did that go? Will we see the results of that?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Right now, we are actually working on something that we're ready as well, just so we can get other additional feedback. But Stacy Manuel was actually at Frost like a day or two ago, and the kids have a great time with it. We can talk to Organic Life and see if they were putting some notes together with that as well.
So we will see it. We
Sure.
will see the survey. Okay. I'm since I have the opportunity, I'm hoping that in our long range planning, we do discuss the idea of having a local, because I've heard that opens up all kinds of possibilities. So just want to get somewhere.
Yeah, that is correct. That's been the detriment for other vendors in the bidding process.
All right, 8.02, meal fees.
This is another example where we are required to increase mid-free 10 cents a year. So we are recommending to minimally increase the lunch fees from $3.35 to $3.45. Also, see the lunch program is 40 cents for lunch and 30 cents for breakfast in terms of a reduced meal price. And then the breakfast, we'd like to actually keep the price at $1.30 to keep it as good as possible with that. So also to the same with milk at 50 cents.
I have a question about that. Is there some kind of cap as to when they're going to stop increasing by 10 cents per year?
No idea.
Okay. Or like, where did it start, right? Was it like
Right.
free and then
It may never end.
Okay, any other questions?
I want to go back to the survey on from the kids. I mean, I definitely want to see the results. Which grades took the survey?
Oh, no, so the survey we're talking about would be a community one that we're working on. The student feedback is probably more notes based, and we can get that information as well.
Yeah, they're meeting with like groups of students, I believe 5th grade, right? Out at
Correct.
the elementary school. So that's more of like a little focus group to get direct feedback. But the survey that we want to partner with Organic Life to put out would be to families to complete and feedback from, which hopefully we'll maybe include the student voice, or we could do a separate one for just students.
For sure.
I mean, and don't get me wrong. I'm personally not sure if surveys are good for students in because adults know how to phrase things to make things viable for. Did you love your hamburger? Yeah, obviously. I'm a kid. I love a hamburger. Was it healthy? I don't know, right? So, I mean, that's the reason I am not the biggest fan of surveys for kids, but fifth grade, not second,
Yeah,
third
and it's
grade.
really conversational, so I think they're doing a good job of actually getting.
And who is actually doing it?
So Stacy, who is our food service director, as well as partnering with our staff from Organic Life.
And I've sat in on a couple of them, and I will say they are very opinionated.
I mean, if you want opinionated, I can send you to my daughter. So the survey is not by a third party or impartial party.
No.
All right, 8.03 renewal for refuse and recycling.
This is another one where we're finishing up our first year, and our contract indicates we can do 2 more extensions. Great, and we've had a really good relationship with Republic Services. It's the increased monthly charge would be $340.04.
That's the total charge for the whole district?
No, that's just the increased charge per month.
No, I'm saying 700 is the whole charge for the whole district?
Per month.
Okay. Any questions? Health and dental insurance renewal?
This is another one where we've been looking at plan options as part of the insurance committee. Currently, we are a funded PPO plan. The proposal is a 17% increase at this time, which is about $14 million. That's how much the total package would be for the PPO. And that is just like Dr. Bresnahan indicated earlier, that the pharmaceuticals are driving those costs. And we could look at like the payment basis up 52% since January of 23. The other piece, though, is that we are looking, and we have ideas already that we've kind of indicated that will decrease some of these prices at a later date next month. The other piece is that we have a fully insured HMO. That one, it's been a lot better for us. That's a 5% increase. So that's going to be $2.9 million. Dental's gone up 6.9%. That's at $900,000. And then there's a voluntary vision plan. It'll be at no cost to the district. It'll be up for employees to participate or not, but they would pay the actual dollar amount. Honestly, right now, these increases are in line with the industry average, not just in education. In fact, I'd argue that in other areas it might be a little, but the district has done a lot the last couple of years to make sure that we can keep the costs as good as effective as possible while not decreasing the quality. So that's where we're at.
So we have one PPO and one HMO. Is that correct? Or okay,
correct.
Reason I'm asking is because we as a 2 and 2 exactly to drive choices and costs down, and it really did help them keep the cost of the insurance very, very reasonable.
Yeah.
Are they self-funded or because of smaller
I can't
staff?
remember. Well, I do understand that it is a factor, but I can't remember the top of my head. But I think it will be an interesting conversation topic for maybe even for the superintendent's council that will be coming up. Just a thought.
Yeah, the HMO, we do have like a high deductible version of that as well. We did change footprint, I believe it was a year or two. Mr. Vittori was on that with me, and that saved the district $1 million just that year. And so that's in whatever.
Perpetuity.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't read. So, so that's been actually a really helpful piece. We have done a lot with the union to make sure that we're keeping prices down.
Okay, workers' comp.
Workers' comp is another one where, again, Dr. let you guys know, payroll and staffing kind of increased our claims by about 8% for the overall cost for the premium. So that's $604,265. Looking at our past claims, though, we are actually trending in a direction. So typically they look at a 5-year window, a 5-year back piece to see what's happened. Some of those bigger years are falling off. So, right, I know that Mr. Tirena does a really good job with his team with the buildings and grounds, going over how not to hurt yourself and any basic type of work. So I think that's been a really good.
Okay. 8.06.
Yeah, so this is an item that is just following suit conversations and board actions. So previously we increasing our director of safety and security. We entered into a 1-year agreement, intergovernmental agreement with Wheeling 21 to share that position. We found such success and need per board conversations to increase that to 1.0. So as that has been approved, is no longer needed. So we will be providing notice in writing to Wheeling 21. I've already given verbal notice, and you can see the timeline of all the steps. So following that order, we'll provide that notice in writing as required by the terms of the agreement no later than May 1st, 2025.
Any questions? All right. Miss Eddy, sorry.
So we had our meeting last month, and next month we'll be having the SRO. Really hoping to have everybody come out like they did for the behavior committee meeting to have that conversation.
Can I just ask a follow-up question on our last meeting? There was like next steps were determined. I mean, I know I shouted one out. People just them out. Will there be a list like provided of what the next steps are?
Yes. So if next approved minutes, then those will be posted online as we do with our other committees. The themes of the next steps and of the areas of strength that were noted.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
9.02, I don't have any updates for the board policy committee. 9.03, the curriculum and assessment committee.
Nothing for that committee, but I am also the rep for the wellness committee. We met this past month. We did policy, including some of the changes. First of all, I want to say hats off to anyone who works to feed our kids every day. It has given me such an appreciation and such a respect for how many requirements they have just in terms of serving size and nutritional quality, et cetera, forever. But yeah, so I want to give a big shout out. If you feed our kids, especially for some of the kids who are experiencing food insecurity, that might be the only food they eat that day. So hats off to all of you. Thank you so much for everything you do for our kids in our district. We talked about nutritional quality changes, increased PE that's happened, and the shared a revelation. It's so simple, and it's so good for those kids. It also cuts down on food waste, and it's just they are going to make some new recommendations to the board. One is just putting a policy, and this was discussed last year too, putting a policy in place that essentially restricts the amount and kind of outside food that's brought into the classroom, so that we can, quell exposing students to could be harmful to them. So basically, like instead of a Valentine's party with candy, you would have little toys exchanged or cards, etc. Two is basically the wellness committee wants to make every 3 years unless there is legislation that leads to a policy change. So those are the two recommendations that they're going to make. Thank you to Dr. Degree and the members of the wellness committee. So that's that. And just while we're here, I wanted to say that Nicole and I got to see the new potential device refresh in person. This was at Miss Griffin's second grade class at Ridge. Thank you, Miss Griffin, for having us. It was amazing. The kids are so tech literate. I was really impressed. I mean, immediately like opening windows. What are you doing? But the devices were awesome. It was great to see them on the devices, especially that will aid in instruction. Miss Griffith imagery and poetry and identifying adjectives where students, they were able to annotate directly on text. So as a former English teacher, that made my heart super happy to watch those two things come together. It's great to see also that Elmo capabilities as well, which I think is another great aid to instruction. And I'm looking forward to possibly seeing this implemented in a junior high, so we can watch the older kids too with this stuff. But that was a treat to watch that.
Yeah, I also loved that literacy lesson she did. She had a book, she pulled the imagery off some of the pages and just the kids, and then they would all individually draw saw in their mind, like from reading it, and they could switch colors so quickly, and just like they were getting those images. They are artists. It was phenomenal. And yeah, being wireless and walking around the classroom and that sort of thing. It was great. I can't wait until we can, put them in the hands of every kid in our district. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. Next, Finance and Facilities Committee, Ms. Notini.
Yes, we just had our meeting today. Thank you, Ron, for facilitating that. I think that it went really well. I was really pleased to see that level of detail for the budget to actual. No thoughts yet. The next one, maybe after the year closes, the June 30 closes, summer timing or something. But thank you for that. And just any other updates. Sarah and I are visiting Juliet. Yeah, we're visiting Juliet Lowe at the end of this month and home in May.
Thank you. The Insurance Employee Wellness Committee, we kind of just heard update on that. EdRed, I'll do EdRed and ISB at the same time. Do you all receive email updates from them, like a lot of the time? Okay. So I really have to update you much on. I shared one today just because I think it was like an immediate call to action if you're so inclined. But other than that, no report on that. So we can go to NSSEO, Mr. Chesney.
My biggest update was presenting today, so I do not need to go on. Other than that, we had committee as a whole on Monday last week, 31st. Yep. Followed by a meeting 2 days later. The operational board that I mentioned before. After brief consideration of it being a board committee, we didn't want to have any issues with Open Meetings Act, and this will be just a superintendent's member district committee, which will be called NSSEO Superintendent's Council, which I believe Dr. Brazahana, you're meeting the first time tomorrow, right?
Yeah, this is actually a meeting to discuss that. I think
Yeah.
that there are some concerns with I think the hope was that there would be layered governance as opposed to the formation of a committee. So some superintendents requested a meeting. So we'll be discussing that tomorrow and seeing where that goes.
It makes sense because there was no solid decisions beyond that made during the as there have been different concerns on what are the responsibilities of the operational board versus the governance board, finance, oversight, etc. So the work is still being continued.
Education Foundation, Dr. Sager.
So at the last meeting, the Education Foundation finished off their mini grants. They approved $2,458, some of which we approved today. They kindergarten welcome materials that they supplied all the schools, which was again in our approved acceptance today. They're working on, they've got the applications for the scholarships for district graduating from 214 and moving on to high school, and they'll be announcing they're working on them. We'll be approving them in next week, hopefully. And so that's in progress. They also would like to point out that picture wall out here that has student artwork from all the schools has been updated. Out there's regular updates that are going to be happening throughout the year where they're going to cycle through more of the students' artwork. So when you get a chance, stop by out there and take a look. NSSEO committee of the whole meeting, just as an observer, just to hear what the governance structure discussion and just to get a little bit of sense of what's going on there. I also attended Grove, where I visited the STEM program again with I don't remember the name of the robots, but the little rovers that do programming to program them. So I got to see a little bit more of an advanced group doing some work that was a little bit higher than what I had previously. And it was really good stuff because you can see as somebody who knows programming to see what they're working on, and they may not understand the skills are this type of programming, but you can see the development going on in the students. I also took the opportunity to have lunch with the sixth graders, and so I went and I had it was America Day because there was like a themed week for different countries, and so I had a bacon cheeseburger. The salsa was absolutely excellent. It was it was really good stuff that was served alongside it with fresh tomatoes. And then I sat down. My son didn't necessarily want to sit with me, so I sat with some other children, and I my own mini focus groups about the food offerings, and some of the stuff they really like, and they'll be very happy to tell you about it, and some of the stuff they don't, and they'll be very happy to tell you about that. So I really recommend doing it. Try and get into the lunchroom and sit down and chat with the students. It's a really good experience.
And Joe, I think it's a perfect example. I forgot in my update to ask anybody who visits to actually exactly that.
It was the day after our last meeting when we mentioned that as a possibility. I'm like, hey, I'm here. It's almost lunch. Let's go.
Yeah. So thank you for mentioning it. I really appreciate it.
You're graduating to the 214 board. So does anybody want to take over the Education Foundation? Okay.
Me.
Oh, quick. Thank you. 9.10, the Long Range Planning Committee, Dr. Bresnahan.
Sure. And Tara, feel free to jump in. So we reviewed a little bit, but the steering committee met yesterday. So our two facilitators led us through really looking at kind of a timeline for both the WOLD portion as well as the RSP portion of really looking at incremental opportunities throughout for board workshops as well as board updates, really looking at a first kickoff committee meeting consisting of 30 to 35 staff members and community members that will kick off very early September. There will be an initial meeting, then there will be 3 breakout focus groups out of that. One will be focused on really looking at programming, so things like early childhood, our dual language program, TDP, ESL, etc. And then one group will be looking at learning environments, so labs and auditoriums and just general learning environments and how they impact students' learning. And then the last one will really be infrastructure, which will be looking at kind of the nuts and bolts and the HVAC and the cabinetry and flooring and the aesthetics of a building. There will be a series of meetings for those 3 groups, and then culminating with the ending of 3 whole group where there will really be looking at solutions. So in between each of those points will be opportunities for work with the board to really have the 2 representatives from the board be able to share out what's happening with the committee. What are you seeing? What are you liking, not liking? Give more direction and feedback back to the committee so that hopefully by the time everything wraps up in March, the board has everything they need to make decisions to move forward with the long range plan.
If you have, this will be in every board meeting. Anytime, I get an update from the minutes from these meetings, we'll share it out. If you have questions, ask. If you need like an extra meeting or want to meet with anybody involved, ask. I just don't want there will be like specific points, like inflection points where the feedback from the committee will go before the board. So like we'll get an update on the data from the boundary study, before we break for, not we break, but the district breaks for the summer. And then before the committee work starts, will then be here in August, I think, to update us on that. And then they'll work to, maybe we can share the timeline with them once they finalize.
Yeah, once we worked on a vision and charge statement to really outline what the work of the committee will be, and then we can share that timeline. So we'll have a folder that we'll add into the weekly, so you can have access to all those documents. So it times out really nicely. June, August, and then committee of the whole in October, which is normally when we have a committee of the whole at the end of October, and then wrapping up with like kind of a final piece in December prior to leading to recommendations or, elimination of the past.
And so like the subcommittees will initially come up with what the priorities are for their little subcommittee areas of focus. And then that's where point, like this would be our focus, et cetera. And then how we solve their, those issues around those focus points, then another pause. And so we can be involved in the whole process, and then the community will be involved. We talked about earlier about the, communications plan to the community. So if you have questions, ask.
Can I ask, when is the next meeting of the long range planning committee?
The steering committee?
Yeah, or the steering committee.
The steering committee is meeting in May. I think we scheduled it for the Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday before the board meeting.
Yeah,
So then
I
we'll
mean,
report out.
I thought at the beginning we talked about having 2 board members. I couldn't commit at that, but in May I can start to commit. So can I be to that next meeting?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm deferring to you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as it's not more than 2, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else from that?
No, so I do want to ask, do we feel comfortable moving forward with engaging with a communications partner? Or do you want more information? I would like to just kind of consensus from the board.
I'm good with it. Everybody not good with it? It might be easier. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, appreciate that. That will help us kickstart that to make sure it's in alignment. And then communications will be represented at the steering committee as well, which will help.
Wait a little bit, just so everybody kind of knows what
Sure.
we're talking about.
So we recognize, I think that this is a pretty monumental undertaking, and we know that communications is going to be critical to the success of this work. And we want to make sure that we are doing as much as possible in a way that really reaches all of our audiences. And so we want to work with a partner that will help round out our communications team, who really is focused in on our kind of day-to-day communications. So this will be a specialized in on work of the long-range facilities planning and make sure that we just don't let anything go through the cracks. They also offer extended services. If at some point the committee or the steering committee or the board chooses to do some polling, statistically valid actual community polling, specific priorities that rise out of the committee that you want to gauge and get a pulse on from the community sense. Often used in referendum planning, but something as large as this may really something the board wants to utilize as well.
No referendums planned.
No referendum.
Okay. Any informational items?
No,
guess I
but
can
can I go real quick back to the behavior intervention? If you go to our last weekly update, there are the draft of the minutes linked in there, which has all the questions that we will then approve next month.
Thank you. All right, then I just need a motion for items A through G as listed on the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, can we get a roll call vote? When you're ready.
Lucas. Then Nicole.
All right, John. Kinsinger.
Aye.
Notini.
Aye.
Sager.
Aye.
Chesney.
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
Eddie. Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Okay.